but it's super cool to have this live streaming going on. It would actually be nice to hear a history of Women's Day. I really look forward to your talk, Julia, because I think this is something that's less talked about. But yeah, it's, I personally going to look forward to it. Do we probably also have Sarah on the call, or is it just too early?
She will join later. I think this is too early for her. She has also some other plans in parallel.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Petra will also join later before her talk.
Yeah. Julia, do you mind if I ask if your talk is going to be related to Women's Day at Max Planck?
No, that's a scientific talk.
Okay. Fair enough. So it's great that there are no coincidence talks. It means that everyone who is interested will attend this event and not any other events.
Maybe Surur, you want to start?
Yeah, I think we are all good to go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the International Women's Day event at Helmholtz Munich. Surur is here. We are grateful to have you. It's our great pleasure to have you all here today. I would like to begin by acknowledging the devastating situations that are going on in Ukraine. Our thoughts and prayers are with all Ukrainian people, staff, and students who are affected in anyhow by the current circumstances. Our thoughts are with you. Today, though, is about celebrating women, their achievements, strength, resilience, devotion, and of course, women deserve celebrations every day. But today, specifically, we are going to hear the inspiring stories of leading female scientists. There will also be a panel discussion featuring both male and female leaders, where we will be discussing some of the common concerns and challenges that women experience, particularly in scientific careers and in academia. During the talks and panel discussions, we will be taking questions via Slido. The top-rated questions will be asked. When you post a question for a speaker, please state the name of the speaker. This helps us with directing the questions to the relevant invited speaker. For the panel discussions, I think the structure of the questions are more defined. But if we do get any questions from the audience that we think brings a new perspective to the dynamics of the discussion, we will definitely consider those questions as well. There will be an important announcement by Laura Martin at the end of the program, specifically for women in comp health. So please stay with us until the end of the program to hear that announcement as well. And I think before I'm done with the opening remarks for the international for today's event, I would just like to mention that we conceived this whole idea of having this event today about 3 weeks ago. And if it wasn't the commitment and contribution by everyone on the organization committee, this event wouldn't be possible. And of course, I will have a proper acknowledgement slide at the end, but I especially would like to extend my gratitude to all invited speakers and panelists who had to free up and rearrange their schedule to make it to today's event. We are grateful to you. Your commitment to empowering women is really inspiring for us, and we just don't know how to. We thank you very much. I think with that, I should be done with opening remarks, and now I would like to pass it to Hannah, who will be chairing the first session. Hannah, please take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, sir. So welcome. My name is Hannah, and I'm a postdoc at Helmholtz, and today I'm happy to chair this event. So I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, Professor Julia Schnabel. Hi again, Julia, and welcome. So many of us already know Julia. She joined Helmholtz and TU Munich as professor for computational imaging and AI in medicine last year. She's also the chair of computational imaging at King's College London. Julia is a pioneer in machine learning and medical image computing, and we're super excited to have her. And we're very happy that she accepted our invitation today. So we're looking very much to her talk. But before, I should mention that there will be a nice buzzer that buzzes first after 15 minutes and then 20 minutes of your talk, Julia. So please don't be surprised. It's just a reminder of time. And Laura shows us now how that sounds. Yeah, thank you, Laura. So Julia, please share your screen. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I hope you can see my screen and hear me well. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today on International Women's Day 2022, and I'm very grateful for the organizers, so Hannah and all the rest of you to put this up. I think it's a really important endeavor. So I wanted to start off with a little history lesson, as in why do we actually celebrate International Women's Day? Women make up half of our society, so we should celebrate every other day, technically. Yet we do that once a year to highlight basically the accomplishments of women. It's a global day on March 8th, celebrated every year, celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. So it's a bit remote from science, but you'll see that actually science plays a really important role in there as well. It was actually first spurred by the universal female suffrage movement, basically getting the right to vote, having a say in society, being able to elect a government. And the earliest version of that was Women's Day, organized by the Socialist Party of America in New York City in February 28, 1909. So quite some time ago. This inspired actually German activists at the time. So Women's Day is very much connected to Germany, interestingly, to actually take this on. And here's a poster on the right-hand side, which actually demands for the suffrage, for the electoral rights for women. It's in 1914 on the eve of the First World War. So that was proposed to be organized annually. And since 1910, it happened across Europe as a commemoration of the first International Women's Day. Every year it happened. So that was a really important right. And actually women didn't get their right to vote in many countries until the 1920s. So actually some had to wait till the end of the First World War. Sometimes it was just women who were above 23 years of age. So different countries did it differently across Europe. So it's this global day. It was celebrated in Russia on the last Sunday of February 1913 for the first time. It was in conjunction, very interestingly these days, with the peace movement on the eve of the First World War. And you see here women's demonstrations for bread and peace in Petrograd, now St. Petersburg, on the right-hand side. And actually the demonstrations marked the first stage of the Russian Revolution. So it was on the 23rd of February 1914 that this happened, and that actually was because of the old calendar was actually March 8th in our now calendar making. So these pictures actually bring back really recent memories to us as well, anti-war demonstrations in St. Petersburg. And actually I'll be watching quite rarely the news today of what's happening there, because it is a really important day in Russian history, as in getting, dealing with the regime. But it was women going on the roads at the time, demanding for bread rations, and also for more rations for their soldier sons. So we also have a European Women's Day, 8th of March, same day, which happens every day on a different topic. This year is also a very relevant topic. Every year it should be a relevant topic, but this year is one which will resonate with many of you. It is to demand or to plan for an ambitious future after COVID-19. This tries to be forward-looking, because we know all we are working from our home offices, unfortunately still a lot these days, gender equality has suffered in that time, mainly because a lot of women still have the larger load of care work at home. Mental health generally suffered with all of us, I think. And this is why this event this year is focusing on planning for hopefully a better future after COVID-19, though of course we're still not beyond, still very much in the midst of this pandemic. But it's important to note that COVID, the pandemic, staying at home for 2 years, actually set us back a lot. In science, you will notice there'll be fewer publications by women, which have happened, fewer grants which have been awarded, and more women actually had to look after childcare. And I'll tell my own story about that as well in this case. There is another Women's Day. It's called the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, which I think is very relevant for us. It was established by the UN as late as 2015, which I thought was really quite late. It was about high time to that. And the mission of that day is to achieve full and equal access to and participation in science for both women and girls, and using that to further achieve gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. So science, and here at Helmholtz, we are very much interested in science, plays a really pivotal role in achieving gender equality, closing pay gaps, and empowering women at all levels in society. And this year's topic, for those who are interested, is maybe a little bit less relevant to us. It's about water, sustainability, equity, diversity, and inclusion. But of course, environment is our most important, one of our most important topics these days. Anyway, so every year again, like the European Union, they also have a topic on Women's Day. So that kind of concludes my little history lesson. I thought it was good to actually make people familiar with that and to think about why we still have to celebrate it if you reflect on your own career. So I thought I also give a little quick overview of my own career and where I think things maybe have been affected by it, by still lack of gender equality in the first place. I don't start at my birth. I could start very much, but I studied computer science, which was and still is unusual for women to do. We were at the time 400 students per year with about a dozen female students. There was not a single female professor in the entire faculty. So I was taught by men, basically. I escaped Germany for a while, for actually what it turned out to be almost 30 years. I did my PhD at UCL, University College London in the UK, and things were better there. Actually, I was pleasantly surprised. But I think there were about 20% female PhDs. That's kind of just how I perceived how I was sitting in the lab next to whom I was sitting. So I was quite glad to see that. And there were several female academics, so they were a little bit more advanced than Germany at the time. I recall one female prof in the time I was there. There was one other female academic promoted to professor. It was still quite little, but it was starting at least. I did then various postdoc positions, and I will add something to that, which I didn't mention on the slides. I went to the Netherlands for a while. It's always good to kind of broaden your horizon and see what's going on in other countries. I did, and I went back to London to do two different places, first to King's College London and then to UCL. The Netherlands was quite good. We were, again, about 20% female researchers, but we were sitting in the radiology department. So it was not strict computer science department. It was actually in the hospital, the University Medical Center. So automatically there were more female researchers. But again, there were no female academics in that entire group. There were some female clinicians, but not that many either. At King's, there were two other women when I started. Again, no female academics, even when I finished there. So that was quite a male-dominated group, which was unusual, actually. It was something which I was surprised at after my other experiences there. UCL coming back, my whole group migrated, was same old, same old. What I don't quite mention on the slide is that actually I did all this with my then boyfriend, with whom I went to high school, in fact, and we're married for a couple of years now and have two kids. We did almost the same career trajectory until we did our PhDs. He started postdoc, I started postdoc, but then he starts quite straight on the academic career, where I carried on with postdocs. When we had our first child, he was promoted senior lecturer. When I had our second child, he was promoted professor. So I was still at the senior postdoc level, whereas he had already accomplished to become a professor, which is something we were fine with, because that's how we shared our family life and shared responsibility. And I accepted that for a while I was being held back and facilitated his career. But it was time actually then to catch up on that. I don't have it in bad memory, actually. We had fantastic times. I was one of the founders of the first MICI football team, the soccer matches, which happen annually at the MICI conference. I'm here the recipient of the first MICI Losers Cup. It's still in my office these days. I'm very proud of having lost in both of these tournaments, but I was having lots of fun. So I was actually doing fine. I had good friends, good colleagues, even though they're predominantly male. But it was my time at some point. So when I applied to a position in Oxford to become associate professor, my husband was super supportive. I was actually commuting from London to Oxford for 8 years. Sorry, my phone is ringing now, which is awkward. I was actually commuting from London to Oxford for 8 years, while he was doing the main childcare provision, picking up kids from nursery and taking them home and taking them there. So actually, this was actually kind of when we switched roles a bit. So he was the main caretaker. Ironically, he got out of jury service for that time because he said he's the primary caretaker. He can't take jury service. It was just not possible. He could not have logistically done that. About Oxford, it was also interesting. It was a very broad engineering department. So it's not mechanical engineering or electrical engineering or aeronautical engineering. It's just one generic engineering department, which meant that automatically there were more female students because they only specialized later, I think. It's because it wasn't that daunting. You're not like doing just one profession. You're actually learning many professions at once. It was an interdisciplinary one. And I think that is more attractive, I think, to women. It seems a bit less daunting. It was immediately a bit less male dominated. So we had about 25% undergraduates there in the course. However, at the academic level, there was a backlog still. I think I was the fourth or fifth female whoever joined that department. And even though all these female academics, these five coming from different backgrounds, one was an electronic engineer, one was a mechanical, one information engineer, one was a chemical engineer, and I was a computer scientist. So again, information engineer. We all worked in biomedical engineering. So we all were in that new Institute of Biomedical Engineering. So immediately we embraced that new discipline, which actually wasn't taught at undergraduate level, only at master's levels at the time. And I think because we were able to make this our own home, we were able to help shape that new discipline. What was also interesting to note at the time, all the female PhDs and postdocs in the entire department worked in biomedical engineering. Because we were at a different site at the Churchill Hospital, basically all the undergraduates taught at the main site never saw a woman, apart from us maybe going down there to teach them, right? So it was, that actually was a drawback, I thought. I was getting promoted in 2014 to full professor. But again, I was a bit disappointed there because I thought, well, I was disappointed, but I was not actively encouraged to apply for promotion. I noticed that actually. It was because I saw some male colleagues who actually said, it's your time, you should apply. I went to the head of department, asked, do you think I should apply? Because if you then don't get it, you have to wait for 2 years. So it's a risk you're taking. Yeah. So, and he said, yeah, I don't know, basically. So I thought I just go for it. He still supported it. But it was kind of, I think we could probably do it a bit more actively than that. Anyway, as soon as I became, the next step was what was really important for me at that time was mentoring. And mentoring is something which we do a bit like a box ticking thing. Everybody's assigned a buddy or a mentor or something, but I think you need different levels of mentors in your career. I had a formal mentor assigned by the department to me, which I thought was really good. He was actually fighting my battles for me with my senior tutor, and things didn't go quite to plan. I was adopted by by another colleague, an informal mentor. We're still really good friends. And my closest colleague, actually, biomedical engineering, also basically acted as my direct mentor. Interesting, all of these had daughters, 2 daughters each. But the 2 more senior male colleagues, their daughters were my age. So they actually could directly relate to me. They saw the struggles that their daughters had with, juggling professional and other obstacles. They could see that with me as well, and they could actually relate to that. And the closest colleague, her 2 daughters were almost exactly the same age as my 2 girls. So actually we had a direct connection there. What I also was finding really helpful was peers, like really people my career stage, directly connecting to them. So I met up immediately. I set that up. I met for chats over ice cream, because I started in September. It was still beautiful weather, with the other 4 colleagues who started with me, and we actually had like just our frustration dump about starting an academic career and not being really prepared for that, but also personal issues, moving places, all these things. And so we met up there. So I thought that was really good. But was the most important thing, without which I could not have managed, was basically having my partner supporting me and our little ones as I was commuting all the time. Actually, my 4-year-old had her first day at big school, as we called it, after nursery. The primary school first day, on the first day when I started big school, started my post in Oxford. So my groups were, I'm very proud to say, were quite diverse, gender diverse, not necessarily ethnically, geographically diverse enough, but still Oxford is a very international place. So I had my groups there with my colleague on the left, our whole lab, and my personal group. That was basically on my leaving day, because I then moved to King's. I was called by King's to come back. And that was interesting because it's an engineering department in a medical school, in the medical faculty, which is quite unusual. Normally you're in the natural sciences faculty, but here we were in the hospital, at St. Thomas's Hospital. And immediately 50% of our undergraduates, PhDs and postdocs are there female. So actually we had complete, absolute, fantastic gender balance at that level. But at the graduate level, sorry, I'm being bombarded with phone calls. Should I switch that off? At the faculty level, I was the most senior non-clinical female appointment they ever had, basically. There were a couple of female clinical professors, 4, I think. Everybody else was at very junior level at the time. So you could see, again, this kind of pyramid situation as we had in Oxford as well. But still, for the first time, I was in a position where I could actually give back, not just try to climb up the career ladder, but also look down the career ladder and help other people, as we call it now, to rise, to help getting to the next step of the ladder themselves. For about 1.5 years, I was head of department of biomedical engineering in the school, filling in for a colleague who was on sabbatical. And I was then also head of research and impact of the entire school for 3 years before joining here. And during that time, I was able to make several female junior, unfortunately, only appointments. But I kept mentoring them. I saw them through probation and promotion even. And I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of, that one of them whom I met when she was just became senior lecturer. Actually, I see she's now a professor, actually. So she's the next most senior female academic which they ever had at the school. And the other 2 gone through probation. One is now a senior lecturer, and they're kind of on their career trajectory. When I left, one of them, she was a former PhD student of my husband's, and I told her I'm now going to Germany and join Helmholtz, and he's already here. She said it's like losing my parents. And I think it was the biggest compliment I've ever had from a colleague, that she felt so well mentored. And it's like the German word doctor father, doctor mother, which actually sums it up. We were her parents, and that our academic parents. Anyway, again, a very nice, diverse group, and I'm really happy to have had them. I still have them. It's still my satellite lab. And you see the diversity is good. It could be better, right? It's but that's one of my accomplishments. Of course, we are all remote now, so this is how we looked for the last 2 years. One thing I wanted to point out: the male postdocs I had, 3 of them went on parental leave. So King's College London allowed them extended periods of parental leave, and they made use of that. So actually, I think things are changing a bit for the better now. I then joined Munich. It was a Leuchtturm appointment, so I was directly hired here at TU Munich and at Helmholtz. Both the initiatives I was part of were for the recruitment of top female scientists. So the TUM was more like a little badge you get generally for top female scientists to make it a bit more amenable for me to come. For Helmholtz, it was an actual award for recruiting international females. And it's a really nice grant award you get, and this allowed me to start building up my institute here. So it was 2 initiatives targeted at women, which is a very nice thing. It was a dual career move for my husband. He actually preceded me here. He came in with a von Humboldt professorship, which is also targeted at international top scientists. Interestingly, I think, if I would be a bit iffy about it, the Alexander von Humboldt professorship is celebrated a lot. Yeah, so it's basically all branded, whereas the Helmholtz Distinguished Professorship is kind of somewhere hidden. So I think there's something we should celebrate more. Elif Zegini also has one of those, and she also has a Tum Liesel-Beckmann Distinguished Professorship. I think these are really nice accomplishments which could be used to kind of encourage more females to go for those. Of course, it hasn't been all easy. Being an academic in the pandemic, being a researcher in the pandemic, being anybody in the pandemic was quite testing, is still testing. And I thought about this when I saw that European Women's Day is for an ambitious future after COVID-19. I just show you my London home office, like cold basement office. I was sitting on my own for 1.5 years. So was one of the drawbacks. It wasn't easy, still isn't still easy. My partner started ahead of me in Munich, so I was staying behind with my kids, seeing them through their school years. When we planned all this, we didn't quite factor in a global pandemic, right? Stupid us. We didn't quite think something like that could ever happen. So we didn't see each other a lot because of all the travel restrictions, quarantine. I couldn't initiate all the collaborations I wanted to already. Building up a new institute, new academic career in a different country, even though it's my own country, is challenging at its best. But during a pandemic, of course, it slows things down tremendously. But things are looking up. I start building up here my institute. I've got lots of nice people to work with. I try to kind of still keep it diverse. I've recruited a few new people who will join us as well. So I hope this will be a great additional career for me here at Helmholtz. I just had 2 slides on my institute, but I think time is running out. It's just telling you what I'm doing. I work in machine learning, biomedical imaging. I want to work on early detection, improved therapy intervention, on looking at large databases, big data for disease interrelations, comorbidity in imaging, and bring this all together to the basically rollout in hospitals. And here just some little teasers, what I'm doing in lung cancer, in cardiac imaging, in liver, quantitative imaging of the liver, and fetal imaging as well. So I'm basically looking at the whole breadth of different imaging methods, and machine learning is the driving force in enabling all this. With that, I want to close, and thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. It was a very great talk, particularly from going from the history of today to actually your personal career path. And also it was an amazing teamwork between you and your husband. It was very nice to hear about all these. So maybe I just ask a question from the audience. You kind of explained with some numbers the gap in the gender gap, particularly maybe in computer science, and I imagine that also in other STEM fields we are observing the same gap. I mean, I graduated a few years ago, and I was also the only female in a lab of 30 in computer science. So still the gap is quite large. So why is there such a big gender gap, and what can we do actually for that?
So by my theory, it's a very personal theory, might be completely off, is it starts with parenting and it starts with nurseries. It's just, I raised two girls. I thought, with their parents being scientists, my parents being scientists, I think they must love it, right? And they don't. And I tried to work against. I bought them Lego. I bought them, technical toys, educational games, everything. And they're good in it. They're good in math and everything. But they never really thought this would be a career for them. And I think it's because nursery, there's these gender stereotypes. If you go into any toy shop, any clothes shop, and you think teachers at school also, they should be aware of these issues. But I was told literally at school, when I chose my two majors for school, math and physics, I was told by my math teacher, with my mother being a math physics teacher at school, if you just choose these subjects, you will never find a man in your life. It was just, I was like 16 or something. I was just, you laugh about this now, but it's just, I took it. I just thought, apparently my mom was able to, so I would be able to. But you still get these stereotypes thrown at you. And it's just all these little microaggressions, which just put people off. Interestingly, in chemistry, you don't have that gender divide so much. And I don't understand it. Chemistry and physics for me are just, two of a kind. They're not that different, right? Chemistry, it's 50% women undergraduate level. Physics is what, 10, 15? I don't know. Computer science here is still 20% women. It still hasn't improved so much, actually. And I don't know where we can change that. We have to change it much earlier. We can't, if we do code for girls, all these things, that's probably way too late. We have to change our really primary education system. And we have to probably teach parents as well about that. I don't want to, micromanage parents, but I think it's when girls get dolls and boys get cars or something, it's just you've already put them on different tracks. And it's not about intelligence, as we know. It's not about ability. Girls usually outperform boys at school right till the end. Yeah, so it's about confidence. It's about being resilient enough to swim against the stream, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you very much. We will have you later on the panel discussion, so we will ask more questions there. I would like to just thank you again. I know that you rearrange your busy schedule to make it make it today, so we really appreciate it. And with this, I would like to move to the next speaker. We are very delighted to have Dr. Sarah Tyshman here today. Hi, Sarah, and welcome. And thank you very much for joining us. Sarah, you're here, right? Yes. Cool.
Would you like me to share my slides?
Yes, I will just introduce you shortly, if you don't mind. So Sarah is the head of cellular genetics and senior group leader at Wellcome Sanger Institute in Cambridge. She's one of the leading scientists in single-cell genomics. Her research focuses on genomics and immunity. Currently, her work has been recognized by numerous awards, and we have invited her today to hear about her career adventures as a successful researcher and a leader. So before starting, I should just say, Sarah, that we have a buzzer that buzzes after 15 minutes and then after 20 minutes of your talk. So just don't be surprised, it's a reminder of time. So Laura shows you now how it sounds. Thank you. So please share your screen. We are all ears.
Sure. Let's see if this works from a technical standpoint. Sorry, can you see this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I'll go into the slideshow mode now and see if this works. I've got two screens and sometimes it just takes a bit of time. Is this in the presenter mode or is this in the?
Not yet.
Okay, so I've clicked use slideshow. Is this?
Yes,
Yeah,
it works.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Awesome. So happy International Women's Day, everybody. And thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to sort of visit you remotely. So just as a short introduction, and thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Laura, for inviting me and organizing this and introducing me. My background is from a career point of view that I was an undergrad at Cambridge and read natural sciences here, and you know, a lot of things that Yulia was saying before, they sort of resonate with me because I sort of started on the physical sciences track, and then I finished in the biological sciences track within the natural science tripos at the university. Overall, I think that sort of hybrid of physical and biological sciences and the ability to do an integrated degree suited me really well. And then I went on to do a PhD in bioinformatics, where at the time it was sort of theoretical and computational biology, with Sarah Tyshman, who's one of the sort of one of the founding figures of bioinformatics, if you like, and sadly he's not with us anymore. He passed away a few years ago, and that was at the MRC Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge. And that's just this sort of iconic traditional molecular biology institute, you know, where Watson Crick kind of did their work on the double helix, and Hurwitz and Kenbrough did their work on protein crystallography and so on. And then I went down to London to do a postdoc with Janet Thornton at UCL, and Janet is of course also one of the founding figures of bioinformatics. She then moved up to Cambridge to become the director of the European Bioinformatics Institute. And at the same time, in 2001, I then started my independent group back at the MRC Laboratory of Molecular Biology. So I basically did my undergrad and PhD in Cambridge, did a postdoc in London, then went back to start my group just over 20 years ago. In 2013, I then moved to the Genome campus, and I was the first faculty and the only faculty member to have a joint position between the European Bioinformatics Institute and the Sanger Institute, and that sort of gave me the best of both worlds, having the computational side of things at EBI and the genomics side of things in the Sanger Institute. And then in 2016, I took on a position as head of one of the departments, one of the programs in the Sanger Institute. And I built up that department called cellular genetics. One of the reasons that I moved from LMB in the city of Cambridge out to the Genome campus is that Eleftheria Zegeni, who's now a director and professor in the Helmholtz in Munich, had started a program on the Genome campus across Sanger and EBI, focused on quality, diversity, and inclusion. At that time, it was called Sex and Science, and it was an exciting kind of program that really made me think that this campus is really different from the center, the more traditional center of Cambridge. And Ellie and that program was one of the reasons that I moved, as well as the scientific epicenter of genomics being in Kingston with these two institutes. And sort of just a short timeline, I've already described it. I did my PhD, then postdoc, started my own group in 2001, and married my husband, you know, with whom I've been together since 95 or something like that. In 2006, we had our first daughter in 2008, second daughter in 2012. And I would just highlight, I've already talked about the positions, you know, I'd highlight that it was really the kids, having the kids that kind of galvanized my thinking and my activities around equality, diversity, inclusion. And of course, all these issues were there before I had the kids, but they sort of opened my eyes, if that makes sense, because I just had a blind spot, I think, before. I won't dwell on all the awards and recognitions from my group, but here I'll just like to highlight the Helmholtz International Fellow Award in 2017, you know, that's gone on for 5 years and has enabled like a partnership basically with Fabian Theis in Munich and other colleagues. Looking back, you know, over 20 years of the Tyshman Lab going, we had a retreat or a celebration of the 20 years anniversary of the group in October, and it's about 150 group members that I've had. And you know, I'm really proud that these people have come from all over the world. We had like maps of, I don't know, 50 countries or so at this retreat in October. the sort of celebration event in October. They've come from lots of different types of backgrounds, different ethnicities, genders, and sort of religious backgrounds and so on, and also, a diversity of scientific disciplines. So it's really a communication exercise for us all to be able to talk to each other. In my department, I also want to say that I'm really proud of the diversity of the faculty. You can see the core faculty here, and the associate faculty here, and I won't go into their personal details or background, but I'll just say that they cover a lot of different, again, sort of ethnicities, genders, ancestries, religious backgrounds, skill sets. We've got clinicians, we've got people with maths and computer science backgrounds, we've got all kinds of genomics technology development and so on. And it's actually our power is in our diversity, and I think our productivity and our scientific discoveries are a testament to that, and I'm incredibly proud of that. One thing that I'd like to highlight here is that collaboration and teamwork. I've talked about being modern, forward-looking, and how that relates to equality, diversity, and inclusion. I'd also like to say that from a scientific cultural point of view, the way we work with each other, is also, I think, undergoing a revolution in science, and collaborating on an equal footing with partners can really accelerate scientific discovery and success. And I'd like to say that I've had incredible collaborations over the years, with amazing women that I'd like to credit here. And early on, Carol Robinson, who discovered new mass spec approaches for maintaining associations in the gas phase, basically measuring intact protein complexes, enabled us to show stereotypical pathways of assembly of small complexes in vitro and later also in vivo. Partnership with Mas Hanifa on cell atlasing human development and the development of immunity has been amazing over the past, more recently. So this was more like 2004 to 2018 or so. This collaboration has gone on over the past 8 years or so. And then a partnership with Aviv Regev to coordinate the Human Cell Atlas Consortium has also been, incredibly useful and productive. And so I want to talk very briefly about the Human Cell Atlas International Consortium. The aim is to create a map of the cells in our tissues, essentially. And you can think of it as a Google Maps for the human body, where the aim is to really get to discrete maps through the very detailed view of the cell and its molecular fingerprint. And I sort of mentioned the culture of research, and that we have a collaborative culture. And Aviv and I really wanted this to be a grassroots, scientist-led grassroots consortium. Not controlled by institutions or funders, but by the scientists themselves. And in that spirit, I'd like to invite you to join the consortium if you're interested in the map of the human body from a computational, genomics, clinical, biomedical point of view. It's a very quick process to sign up at humancellatlas.org/join-HCA. And we're now at the phase of the Human Cell Atlas where we're able to assemble the data. So we're able to put together the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle and the cells in the different tissues. And one exemplar of this is our recent work on categorizing and assembling the immune system across tissues. So we have about 15 tissues from 12 individual deceased transplant donors, about close to 500,000 cells. And we've developed machine learning models to automatically annotate the single cell transcriptomics data sets. And this is available at celltypes.org. It also provides a sort of encyclopedia of cell types. So it's basically organizing the different cell types in our body and providing computational models to predict them automatically. And you can get the feeling for this here, where we have all the cell types here in the columns across the top, the different tissues on the left, bone marrow, spleen, lymph, lung draining lymph node, mesenteric lymph node, liver, lung, intestines, and so on. And then the different cell types across the top, and the enrichments are shown with the asterisks. So you can get the feeling basically the myeloid compartment is massively enriched in lung, B cell compartment in spleen and lymph nodes, T lymphocytes in lymph nodes and gut and so on. And this work, which I won't dwell on, is on bioarchive and has been accepted in Science. And some of the punchlines are that we see convergent phenotypes across tissues, like erythrophagocytic macrophages, in bone marrow, liver, spleen, lymph nodes, and so on. Tissue specialization of alpha, beta, and gamma delta T cell subtypes, shared clonotypes of T and B cells across tissues, kind of demonstrating the systemic nature of the immune system. And this is the fantastic team, across groups and across institutions that's allowed this work to happen. It's really a UK, sort of Cambridge, New York City kind of collaboration across many different groups and many disciplines with some amazing young people. Cecilia, who started her own group in Milan at the Technopole, and Chuan, who developed Cell Typist, along with other group members, and Joe Mena from the clinical school, and of course, Parsi, as well as our collaborators in New York City. I want to spend the last few minutes talking about how we can promote inclusion in science and the work that I've been involved in this area in terms of developing policies. And this is again started off in a collaboration to think about policies with another Helmholtz director now, Anna Pombo, who's in Berlin. And this goes back to 2010, 2011. So it goes back a long way. And I mentioned that I started thinking about these issues when I had my first daughter. And what Anna and I suggested to the Medical Research Council of the UK, which is the funding body that funds basic biomedical research, not the clinical, which is the NIHR, but it's the kind of basic science, was that there shouldn't be any administrative tasks for people on parental leave. There should be flexibility with respect to evaluations. So the MRC has 5-year evaluations. And Anna was asked to present at an evaluation 6 weeks after giving birth. So there should be flexibility with respect to this. I was loaded with a ton of administrative tasks during my first parental leave. That the assessments have to take the leave into account. So not only if you're on leave at that point in time, that there should be an automatic extension of the tenure track period. This is something that still hasn't been implemented. We're in 2022 now. We proposed this in 2011. That there should be a retention of paid leave rights when you're changing funding sources within the UK, so that there's an agreement basically, so that people don't lose the right to have parental leave if they have a baby or child early on in their contract when they're switching, because of postdocs and students and even young faculty kind of switching, and I was actually affected by this. It didn't make a difference because I had tenure, but I was affected by this in some sense when I was switching from the MRC to EMBO funding when I went to EBI. I wouldn't have had maternity leave rights on EBI, but I had my daughter as I was changing jobs, so I had to sort of stay for longer in my previous job. That there should be appropriate private rooms for meetings to allow childcare. If there's a lack of childcare, so that meetings can still happen in the presence of a child. There's health and safety issues around this that didn't allow this basically in LMB. When on parental leave, that individuals receive information about their rights in clear language and have support. And I'm really proud that at the institute where I'm ahead now, we have excellent policies around this as well as around parental leave. And the note that we also said was, this is for parental leave, but there could also be issues around caring leave. Now we fast forward to 2011, and together with Jasmine Fisher and Mas Hanifa, Jasmine is a computational biologist professor at UCL. Mas is a clinician scientist in Newcastle in my department, now moving to my department full time. We've developed a proposal that are under. This is under revision or under review at Nature Communications, and will come out in Nature Communications soon. But what we're proposing is that there should be training in language used around unconscious bias, and this is not only for women specifically, but it's about equality, diversity, and inclusion. How to use language that's inclusive, and Julia, the previous speaker, kind of addressed that, in a very crass way, where she said that she was told as a student that she wouldn't find a partner, if she studied maths and physics. I mean, that's a very obvious example, but there are many more subtle examples. That there should be full transparency for promotion and pay, gender parity in talks, conferences, and grants, and a lot of these things hinge on the funders who have a huge influence on the academic landscape. There should be conflict of interest declarations for grants for hiring. So this is if there are people who are partners in life and it affects their jobs. Anonymous statements about mentorship, and this is again to make a better research culture for mentorship of trainees who are very dependent in academia on their mentors, and so that's a kind of dynamic that's open for abuse. Basically, that there should be technician support for students and postdocs during and after pregnancy, that conferences should be on weekdays, not weekends, and that they should be accessible to parents. And this is something that the whole of the academic culture is very much geared towards weekend work in terms of conferences and so on. And that's something we should think about as a community, in my opinion, that there should be flexible working for parents and carers, and for the menopause, statutory compassionate leave and flexible working and education on this as part of inclusivity training. And basically as I've said before, my very deep-seated belief is that increasing the representation allows creativity in research to flourish, it fosters new discoveries, and it drives innovation. And there's a strong business case for it because it improves the quality of the science. And with that, I'd like to say thank you and take any questions.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It was amazing, very impressive, impressive research, and also all your suggestions for reducing the gap was really interesting. So you won't join us later on the panel discussion, so I would like to ask maybe a few more questions from you. So the organization committee has already prepared some questions, so I will ask from those and also from the audience. So the first question is that there is a famous quote saying that diversity is having a seat at the table, inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having that voice to be heard. How much do you think we are far from this belonging culture? So we already talk about diversity, but how much these underrepresented groups are having a voice that is heard?
I mean, that's a very broad question, and there's huge differences across the globe, at different countries, different fields, as Louis said, physical sciences versus biomedical sciences and so on. And there's differences also with respect to different, let's say, groups, socioeconomic groups. I mean, with respect to specifically sort of biomedical science that I work in and women, which I'm kind of representing myself, I think there have been big changes over the last 20 years. I said I've been a group leader for over 20 years. There have been significant, really great, fantastic changes, and it's thanks to the women who've come before us and my generation that's happened. And I recommend the film Petra, Scientist on Netflix. If you want to see more about that. But there's still a long way to go forwards, and with respect to both gender, but also other aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So from the audience, some of us are interested to know more about the challenges that you face when you mentioned somewhere in your talk that having two children actually opened your eyes. So could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that? What do you mean?
It opened my eyes to the fact, I mean, in a nutshell, it opened my eyes to the fact that the system isn't, and remember, so I had my first daughter in 2008, and things have changed since then, thankfully. But the system isn't designed or geared towards a group leader having, giving birth. So there's the physicality, and this could be, a woman or a transgender man or whatever. So the birthing parent itself who undergoes a physical change, and the caring duties. The system isn't geared around that. And I've mentioned ways in which that was clear to me. And because I also started talking to other people, so there's my own personal experience, but then I started just asking, other women, in specifically, and I've mentioned Anna Pombo, for instance, and she had to stand up and defend her program in these 5-year evaluations with a site visit with a committee 6 weeks after giving birth to a child with a hole in the heart who was waiting to undergo heart surgery. It's just not right in any, legally, ethically, in any way, shape, or form. But the system isn't geared towards having that flexibility in it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I don't want to talk about my own personal experience and dwell on it. I've come through. I think, I've learned a lot, and makes me a better leader, I think, in terms of sort of understanding people and life situations and so on. And also, so I'd like to look at everything in a positive sense, but what I mean is that I became sensitive to the system just isn't geared towards that kind of thing. And there'll be many things like that where the system isn't geared towards other things like, religious activities or, ethnic differences and a very simple thing, just one very simple thing that I would say, your nice little tripartite, phrase, it's about being heard, right? And that applies to science, to scientific discoveries, results being presented, and really in academia, as well as to the environment that you're working in. And with respect to, hearing data and results from scientists, whether they're undergrads, PhD, postdoc, faculty, one very simple thing is to kind of imagine if that person, if you didn't see their face or their body and they presented that data, how would you evaluate it? And how would you evaluate the PhD application, the postdoc application, the faculty presentation, if you couldn't see them? In orchestras, basically, it's very easy to do that because the interview is basically playing the instrument. And in the US, they then, in orchestras, they then had the thing where you have a curtain and the person just plays the instrument and then they're given the job or not, depending on how well they play. And that increased the fraction of females, to 40% when it was down much, much lower. And if there's something like that for science, I think it would change things very, very quickly. Because there's a lot of unconscious bias that all of us here, whether you're male, female, we all have that in our heads. And that's a very simple thing. All these practical things, about parental leave rights and, those things, of course, we should be heard and those things should change too. But there's also the pure evaluation of the scientific data, results, discoveries, and so on, and giving people jobs and opportunities and scholarships and fellowships and accepting publications and so on in a kind of way that's unbiased by how the scientist looks, let's say, or sounds or whatever.
Yeah. So speaking about subconscious biases, did you ever feel you had to be exceptionally better than your male colleagues to be given opportunities, particularly as a junior?
Yeah. All the time, and it continues to this day, all the time, because basically the way I look, so I have long hair, right, and I think I still look relatively young.
Of course.
I haven't changed, I haven't cut my hair short or changed the way I look. I've made that decision because it's who I am. And the way I look isn't, I'm very clear in my mind that the way I look doesn't conform to, a world leading scientist. And that's just the way it is. And so people will think I'm the secretary or the note taker or whatever, when I enter. And then when they hear my name, they're really surprised sometimes and so on. And that's, what it means is, as I said, is that you have to, the value of your science has to be many-fold higher. The impact has to be a lot higher. And remember, I started my group when I was 26 in 2001. So I was a very young PI. I did a very fast undergrad 3 years. I did a very fast PhD. I did a very fast postdoc. So I was only 26 when I started my faculty position. And so I had the bias about, being very young and being a woman. And that meant that, I traveled around the world giving talks at conferences and committees and so on. People just didn't, it didn't compute. There's kind of a disconnect between, what they're seeing and so on. And so that's, but I would probably be the same if I looked at myself, right? It's just that I know, the difference is that I know, the hard work and the achievements and everything that I've gone through. And my undergrad and my PhD. Do you know what I mean? But if I just looked at myself, I would have the same kind of bias in my head probably. And that's why I'm saying to everybody, please, think. Don't use your gut feeling. Kind of think about the evidence basically that the person is presenting. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So how do you think we can improve those?
I think it's hard. I mean, every person themselves who's making a decision about a career and so on can try to work on that. But there's also the kind of statistical unconscious bias comes from the statistical observations that your brain is making in the society. And so at the same time, developing policies, as I've said, to promote inclusion that are kind of providing the framework so that there's more the system is more open, basically, and supportive to people from all different backgrounds who have all different life kind of frameworks. Is another way to just change the numbers of diversity of scientists who come through the system. And it will be, that's something that everybody should be interested in, because we want the best science, and the best science will be delivered by the best people and by the most diverse people. So it's not just about having, in my field, which is sort of genome biology, we need physical scientists, we need biomedical scientists, we need clinicians. Everybody has to work together. So my department covers all of those different disciplines, and it's the diversity. As I said, it's the diversity and the working together that's our superpower. And not recognizing that, I think, is a mistake in the modern day and age of science. That's an interdisciplinary activity.
Yeah.
And so there's diversity in science, but it's also diversity of people and viewpoints.
Yeah.
And they're linked. Those things are linked. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would just like to keep asking questions, but we have to stick to the schedule. So it was very nice, Sarah, to have you here today. And thank you very much for rearranging your busy schedule. We are super grateful for that. So
it's a pleasure and an honor. Happy International Women's Day, and goodbye.
Yeah, happy to you too. Bye-bye. So now we move to the next speaker, Professor Petra Schweiler. So hi, Petra. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi. Yeah, it's great to be here.
A pleasure to have you here. So, Petra is director at the Max Planck Institute of Biochemistry and an honorary professor in physics at LMU in Munich. She's known for her groundbreaking work in the field of fluorescence, cross-correlation, spectroscopy, and numerous contributions on model membranes. We have invited Petra today to learn more about her outstanding research career. So before moving to our talk, I should just mention that we have a buzzer that buzzes after 15 minutes and also once after 20 minutes of your talk. So don't be surprised, it's just a reminder of the time. Yeah, this is how it sounds.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very good to have a buzzer for me, because I always go over time. This is not the beginning of my talk here. So now we are starting. Yeah, so I didn't know how much I should talk about our work really, but probably I should, because I'm doing something completely different from Sarah, quite the opposite. Although we are still in the life science business. So I thought that I would basically do some sort of a blender of personal motivation and life and my science. So this is my group as it was last year at our retreat in Ringberg, which we were very, very happy to have carried out in person. And nothing happened. Unfortunately, we survived it fully without infections, which was really, really good. So let me explain a little bit what my scientific ambition was since I was a little kid. Since I was, could even think back, I always was totally obsessed with the question what life is, because I found that it's so utterly different from everything else that I just had no idea how you could get a grips on that phenomenon. And of course, there were some heroes, so I have to say, also I liked biology and animals and everything as a kid. I was very clearly not a biologist because I really have not a good brain for data, for facts, right? So I keep losing everything immediately. So I learn it, I forget it. And so it was very clear that I should do something with maths because that was something I was really good at. So I studied physics, and my heroes in the field of physics were Erwin Schrödinger, who has written a very, very good book about what is life from a physicist's perspective. So if biologists read that book, they keep, pulling their hair out because it's completely, it would from a today's biologist perspective, it's a lot of rubbish. But the questions in there are really, really deep and interesting. And they are also valid until today because Schrödinger basically nails it all down to the question of how a system can actually, keep going, developing without decaying, due to entropy. So every living system has this ability to beat decay by somehow coupling to energy consumption, either by sunlight or chemical energy, like we take it up. And how is that done? How does a system start doing that and, designing itself? Obviously, Schrödinger was no longer there when I started my, career in science. But this guy, Manfred Eigen, he was actually, my father was a chemist, and he kept telling me that Manfred Eigen, the first, great Nobel Prize winner after the war, was not quite correct, but he was, a chemist that was always, on our breakfast table, he was, the guy. And when I started doing my, search for diploma thesis or where to go to, I found out that the guy is actually still alive and still doing science. And he was actually doing science in Göttingen at the Max Planck Institute. And I decided that I wanted to go to him and, investigate the riddle of life. So Manfred Eigen has, earned his Nobel Prize in a completely different field, in the study of ultra-fast reactions. But from the 70s on, he basically was very much concerned with the question of evolution. So he worked on theoretical evolution, and that's what I wanted to do. And then when I had finished my studies in physics, I went to him, asked for a PhD, and he said, well, I would take you, but I'm not doing any more work on theoretical evolution. For my last years, I've decided to do a single molecule detection. And so he showed me some of the machines that he had in his lab, and there were basically microscopes, in an optics lab, all these, dark and optical tables, lots of lasers, microscopes, and I really liked that. I thought, okay, that sounds good. Then I just quit doing, work on evolution. I just do experimental biophysics. And I had a very, very good, fellow starting with me, Michael Brinkmeyer. And I have to say that he influenced my scientific career quite a bit because he was so full of himself. I mean, he was a nice guy, but he was, he managed everything. And at some point I thought, well, this guy is actually, he can, apparently it's doing it for him. So why don't I just copy him? And so I just copied him, just being full of myself too, and just doing the same stuff as he did, a very, presenting with this voice, I can do everything. And it worked. And I had a nice other collaborator, Rudolf Riegler, and the method I'm not going to talk about, which is basically fluorescence correlation spectroscopy, which was a very hot technique at that time. So I had the advantage of being right there in the biophysics when single molecule microscopy and spectroscopy started to become famous. And that I did quite some good work there during my PhD, and that earned me, quite a standing in the field of experimental biophysics. And now comes the interesting part and the twist in my, scientific trajectory in a way. I have to say, and I'm going to this later, with the single molecule work I did, with the technology development I did, I basically earned myself my career as a, Max Planck director in a way, because all my, scientific prizes and everything that I won basically was all about single molecule methods. And I would say I have contributed quite a bit to this. But when I was, a Max Planck director, then I said, well, now I have all the freedom to do whatever I want. And I decided what I really want to do is going back to this old question, because what I found out in my working with techniques, applying them to biological systems, I found out that biological systems are simply too complex for me. I care very much about life, but it's just too complicated. I mean, every single cell has just too many parameters, too many proteins, too many everything, right? So you can measure, but you can never understand. You can probably understand a little bit, and you can do a little bit there, but you have never a full understanding of the system. And I really dislike that. Being a physicist, I want to understand the whole thing. And usually in physics, if you want to understand an atom, you go to the basic atom, which is the hydrogen atom, and then you can develop things from scratch. So I asked myself, what is actually the hydrogen atom of biology? There must be one, right? Biology started at some point. It didn't start like it is today with the, thousands of genes. It started simple. And if it did that once, why should it not do that today? So could we design a minimal life where it's possible to understand the whole thing? And that's my question of research that I'm, pursuing today. Of course, we haven't come much into that, but it's a great question and it's a lot of fun. The different, pillars of my research are manifold. Of course, we're still developing methods because we have to understand what we are seeing. We are understanding, the minimal systems very precisely, quantitatively. We do a lot with membranes because the first step of living systems that I'm concerned with is how do we actually get a compartment that is able to replicate, and that's a mechanical thing in principle. You have a membrane compartment and it's replicating. So what is the minimal? We could also take any other question of or phenomenon of life, but cell division is really what interests me most. So we are doing a lot with model membranes. We're doing a lot with proteins because we need to understand how proteins are doing it in the real cells to understand how they could, or how functional modules could do it in simple systems. And we are doing a lot with microsystems technology because, there's a lot of really cool tools that you can use to, assemble molecules and study them. So this is basically our work at the moment. And how far have we come? Just let me show you that it's possible to create a very simple self-organizing system that basically takes energy and creates it into something that is interesting. And we took this system from bacteria. So this is the positioning system of the E. coli bacterial cell to position the set ring, the division ring. And this is a system of only 2 proteins, so very simple systems. And these proteins basically use ATP to create patterns, and these patterns are oscillating back and forth in the cells. And by this, they position the divisome, basically the ring machinery, to contract and make a scission to the middle of the cell. So we purified them and brought them, in a completely non-biological setting, just a cover slide with a membrane. On the top of that, we have the proteins, and you can see they're doing their job. And if you encapsulate them into small vesicles that have nothing to do with the cell, just a vesicle, you can actually appreciate that these guys are doing very cool stuff in the cell, right? So all you have in there is 2 proteins and ATP. And this is what you get, right? I mean, it's pretty amazing. And what we've recently done, so this is still not a real machinery to divide. It's a spontaneous rupture, and it's not really working downhill an energy gradient. But what we've recently accomplished is that we basically made it all in one vesicle. So the proteins that position these, oscillating proteins and the ring-forming proteins, which are supposed to form the divisome. And here you can see how the rings are, this is an in vitro expression. So we basically position by, the oscillations, this minimal ring-like structure in the middle of the compartment. And that's pretty impressive what you can do here. And you can do that also with purified proteins. So you don't need the whole in vitro expression machinery, which we have in here, just to show that you're getting somewhere. So it's still not a full cell division, but it's already pretty close. Okay, so now this was the scientific part, and now let me get back to my career. So obviously, I have made quite a career in research, and I would say as a real researcher, and I would call myself a real researcher. Max Planck Director is as close to God as you could possibly get. But let me tell you a little bit about my motivation, because there are many motivations for a career in research, and for sure I was never the person who always wanted to be the best, just accomplishing, being a show-off person, to just be the shiny one on top. That was not really my motivation, and I was also not aiming to become rich. It's also not a good motivation for becoming a scientist. And very importantly, I also didn't want to become a boss. I have absolutely no intention to have power. Why would I have power? I don't need power, right? So the only important thing for me was that nobody else would have power over me, and that was something that was very clear from a very small kid on. I did not want to be working under someone. I picked my PhD boss, Manfred Eigen, because he was already retiring. He was basically in the institute for like 2 weeks in the year, right? All the other time he was buzzing around. He talked to me altogether, I would say, about 3 hours during my whole PhD. So I did not have much interaction with him, but he gave me free rein, so I could do what I wanted. And of course, he had all the money he needed, so you could really play cool stuff with him. And what I would say my motivation for research is an artist's motivation. I wanted to just do what I like to do. And well, that's what I accomplished more or less. Of course, I'm, writing grants and beating bureaucracy now, but I would say for me, it really paid off that I can do what I wanted to do. For me, science is an art in a way. And of course, it's very obvious that you cannot finance, thousands of artists. So that's the little problem with the scientific career. You cannot, you cannot expect that all scientists who like to do science can have a full-term position, because in a way, society doesn't need us that dearly, right? They need our work, but not every single one of us. And that everybody can do what they want is I would say it's some sort of a mercy that we have, which is great. And I think we give something back to society, but it's not that we really should rely on this being, a track that goes from, studying to a full-time position as an independent researcher. Now, let me because the question was what were my greatest challenges. I have to say I did not really feel many challenges from the point one I did my academic career. I mean, of course, during studies, I found it always very annoying that, I studied physics, and of course the guys, they had no doubt on their abilities, right? And I had a lot of doubts in my abilities, and that was, of course, not very nice, but you learn to cope with it. But what was a real challenge was my, to understand that as a woman, you can have a career at all, because I was born even earlier than Sarah. I was born in 1968, right? So just after the war, the last one. And I basically just want to bring that to your attention that until 1977 in Germany, we had a law. You can read it yourself. I mean, that was in our law, right? I mean, if you come from Switzerland, that was in your law even until the 80s, right? And I, at 1977, I was about 9 years old, so already quite, advanced in my, in my development. And of course, although I did not have any feeling that I was oppressed or so, or that it was expected from me to have a household, this was kind of in the air, right? So that was what happened, right? You, at some point as a woman, you would have kids and then go with your Kinderwagen, and that was basically it. And for me, it was clear I did not want that, right? I mean, absolutely not. For me, I had no intention to have kids until the age of 30 or so. I really have to say that because it makes a difference, right? But this was, I would say, the greatest challenge, that at some point I really had the feeling, okay, actually, I can be independent. I don't need a husband. I don't need kids. And that is something that you have to realize. So just a little bit through my, to my CV. I put the important decisions in yellow. So of course it was also important to study physics, but it was kind of okay. That was just what made a lot of sense for me. I say it's a bizarre decision because I was never really so much interested in physics. I was just very good in maths, and it was clear for me that I did not want to do any, math stuff for insurance companies or banks or so. That was absolutely clear that that's not my world. So the reason why I studied physics was basically I thought, well, you can use maths there. And the first good decision in my life, I have to say, I mean, and I'm not meaning this in a romantic sense, although I could, but we have been married for over 20 years, so it's not necessarily a romantic statement, but my husband is a great guy for me because he never wanted to be, the guy who, you look up to. So he was always, it was very clear that he had no intention to be, the carer for the family or so. He was just very, he had three sisters and a mother who was very self-confident, and it was very clear that this guy had no intention to make me his, housewife. And the second really good decision was to enter the lab of Manfred Eigen because he was just the right guy for me. I mean, he gave me all the freedom and also, the money to do my research. And a really good decision also was to go to the US in 97, because at that time, Germany was still very conservative. So the track was basically, after the PhD, you would be the habilitant of some guy, and that you would be the slave of a professor and work for him, of course him, until you at some point had the mercy that he would promote you for professor. So the group leader positions, all that was not really in place in Germany at that time. It just started to come, and the very first funding line where you could apply for group leader positions was from the BMBF, the German Ministry for Education and Research, in a program called BioFuture. And because it was the German Ministry for Education, which always has this, economic thing to it, it was basically the question, not just for a research group, but the call was to found your research group and develop a business plan for your company. And of course, I had absolutely no intention to write a business plan because that wasn't my world. But I had a really good colleague, not the Brinkmeyer guy, but another one as a PhD student who always wanted to found a company. And this guy, and not myself, but this guy approached me and said, Petra, you're doing so great work. I was already a postdoc in the US. And I want to found a business. Why don't you apply for that program? I become your postdoc and you can do whatever you want scientifically, and I have the money for my company. And I said, well, let's try. And we did that. And I can tell you, I became a professor and he founded a company that was sold for a couple of millions to Bayer. So that was a success story. And I mean, I was not the manager of that. That was basically Andre. And I was just, taking the opportunity at the right time, not feeling shy to do it with him. It was really cool. And then I became a group leader in Göttingen, obviously, and things went well. I had really nice, good students working hard. And I basically only after 3 years, I had a full professorship, lieutenant, everything, at the age of 34. And from then on, I basically decided, well, why should I not have kids, right? Now I have everything. That's also a luxury, right? I'm completely aware that this is a luxury, right? And because, I just had no desire before that to have kids, and it was still not too late, apparently. So I got addicted and had 3 of them. And I think that was a good decision too. Yeah. Oh no, I told you I'm going over time. I always go over time. I just have a selection for most decisive factors for you, if you want to hear them still. Well-equipped labs, really good decision. Oh yeah, very importantly, I took my publications in my own hand from the start, writing them, everything, because my PhD advisor, Manfred Eigen, he didn't care a bit about publications. He didn't, there were a lot of people who did not publish a single work in his group. Very importantly also, for some of you, I applied for a fellowship after my PhD. I did not apply for postdoc positions, and I think that's very, very important. I think after the PhD, you should be the maker of your own career. You should know what you want to do. You should apply for it. You should not wait for a position for you. You should take your, destiny in your own hands. Yeah, so I think I talked about most of it. You know, as a group leader, I took every possibility to travel around and present my work. I think this is also very important for those of you who are already at that stage. And with this, I'm at the end, and I'm really sorry that I went over time. And now I'm happy to you know, answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Petra. It was super, super impressive. Impressive research from fundamental questions, and very inspiring. You will join our panel discussion soon, but I still would like to ask 2 questions, one from the committee and one from the audience. So, Petra, you have one of the most prestigious scientific positions in Germany, and I imagine that you are the role model of many people. So, and you have talked, because of your position, with a lot of people. So, how do you think we should assess diversity in a group? Should we just simply count the number of, for example, diverse people, or should we have some other metrics for that?
Yeah, you know, I would say we have it's actually a very interesting time that we are going through, because now we see what actually happens if the times are not so comfortable anymore. We are entering a phase of non-comfortable, you know, in many, many ways. The pandemic already showed it, and it will be even worse with the war. I am afraid that in these times when, you know, everything becomes harder, the only way is working harder. I mean, I'm the much that I you know, appreciate that we should have an eye on diversity. We should, what Sarah said, of course, it's totally unfair if somebody who has a small kid with a heart failure has to give it a talk. But if there's only one position, the guy or the person who works harder will get the position. And I think what we women should do is we should just make clear that guys cannot have kids and a family without also compromising, right? There's no way that you can get to this point without, you know, you have to sacrifice, you have to compromise, you cannot have everything. It's absolutely impossible, right? I mean, work-life balance, my God, what a nice term, but not for the absolute leaders. It's not possible, right? It should be possible for people working in industry and earning the money, right? It's completely true. But for the highest positions, wherever, in the clinics, in the research, there's no way that you have work-life balance. I mean, it's just not, I mean, of course, I actually have to admit that I have a lot of that. I'm a very lucky person, but it's not something that you can actually expect. And the only thing I ask for is that the sacrifices have to apply for everybody, right? That not the women have to sacrifice and the man can have everything, right? Because there's always a woman who keeps their backs, you know, clean, right? Also the old people that we have to care for. Why should the daughters care for the old people? Why not the boys? I mean, this is something, it should just be distributed fairly. And I think that is the most important aspect of, you know, creating some sort of a, you know, equal, I mean, it will never be equal, because people who are more concerned, people who care more for people, for their relatives, for their kids, they will always have the bad card, right? So the guy who says, oh, who cares about the guy? Who cares about my father? Let him rot away. I mean, of course, this guy can basically, you know, they can work 9 hours, 12 hours, no problem. So unfortunately, this is a fully unjust and unfair thing that you will never be able to completely remedy, that people who care about people, about their relatives, about others, they will always face you know, a blow if it comes to the career. And that will be worse in times of, you know, in problematic times, as we have seen in the pandemic very clearly. Women, you know, were the ones who had to face the greater, you know, problems by, you know, kids not being able to go to school. It's always the one who is, you know, who cares more, that has to take the, you know, the blame or the hardships. And that's something, I mean, we can do what we want. I mean, we try it, of course. I mean, I try what I can to, you know, keep, you know, to be, I mean, in terms of PhD students, postdocs, you know, we have almost equivalent, you know, women, men. I mean, it comes, you know, the problem starts if the kids come or if the parents get sick, if care work comes up, then the problem starts. And I mean, as a society, I think we are doing already quite something to try to avoid the greatest hardships, but it will not be possible to avoid the hardships completely.
Yes. Yeah, true. So maybe the last quick question from the audience. So some of us are interested to know whether female mentors can be better for guiding a junior female scientist.
They can, but I'm not saying that they are naturally the better ones. I mean, I've had a lot of really, really good, very concerned, very considerate male colleagues who have been brilliant leaders.
So what do you think is important actually, maybe for selecting the right mentor?
What is important? Having seen a lot, I would say, having an open eye and open mind, and being able to, you know, see yourself in the other one. I guess this is always important, and that has been one of the problems, that men can only see themselves in the other one if the other one is a man. But I would not say that this is, you know, naturally so. This was just how it was for a long time. But I think what is very important is that you can really appreciate what the other person is going through, what the person is doing. It's not so easy. I mean, this is a gift that, I mean, you can train it to some extent, but not completely.
Yeah, true. Thank you. Thank you so much, Petra. So we will have you later in the panel discussion. So I will now pass on to Dr. Nergis Ahmedi to moderate the panel discussion. Nergis is head of department at Fraunhofer Institute for Cognitive Systems in Munich. So please, Nergis, take over.
Hi, everybody. I think we should have all of our panelists here. So we already had the privilege to get to know Julia and Petra and see their beautiful faces and hear them. We have 4 more panelists here with us. And if I'm looking over there, it's my other screen there. So I start with Professor Maria Colomer. She is a friend and also professor of functional genomics at LMU and group leader at Computational Epigenetics at Helmholtz. Welcome, Maria. You're here.
Yeah. Hi, Nergis. Thank you very much.
Okay, so next person here with us is Dr. Carsten Marr. He's the director of Institute for AI for Health at Helmholtz. Hi, Carsten.
Hi, everybody. Thanks.
Hi. Welcome. Thank you very much. And then we have Dr. Nakai, group leader of translational genetics at Helmholtz. Hello now.
Hi, Nergis. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, again, friend, Dr. Michael Menden, junior group leader and ERCSTG laureate in computational biomedicine from Helmholtz. Welcome, Misha.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay. So I'm going to start the questions a little bit with some numbers, right? So everybody ready? And numbers about Germany. I did a little bit of research of what nerds do to see what is the index of equality in Germany and in sciences. There I noticed actually Germany's index is 67.5, where 1 is total equality and 0 is absolute no equality, right? And this is a tiny little below average of Europe, which was a surprise to me when I saw that. The top of the list is Sweden with 83, and the bottom is Greece with 52. Now we start with looking at some numbers, because we all have some feelings about how diversity is going on. But let's see why the numbers are saying what they're saying. Like, for example, The numbers again show participation at work has improved a lot. Like, so we have the 83, that's the scale of the index, as I said, 0 to 1. 83 participation is equal between men and women at work. But happiness and feeling that their work has quality and their careers are developing is a lot less for women. A number is 62. I'm going to start this question with Petra. She's here. Like, what do you think, Petra, is the reason? And especially today, we're focusing on scientific careers and people in STEM and engineering.
Why Germany is so bad?
Why is there participation? Not about Germany particularly. Why is there is a good participation at work, kind of like equal men and women at work, but women are less happy with their works?
With their work. Oh, I see. I didn't understand that. Women are still less happy with their work. Well, I mean, first of all, we have to see that we are talking from a very privileged, layer of society. And I'm not sure what would actually be the outcome if you would talk with this privileged layer of society, both in terms of representation of men and women and also with how happy people are. I think we have to see that in Germany, I would say there's a large number of underprivileged people. And I do think that, I mean, this is also true for other countries, but in Germany, probably you have the largest gap, one of the largest gaps between these, layers. I mean, if you just think about all these, only, single mothers that are raising their kids, basically shopping there, jobbing there and there, and have like, I don't know how many. I mean, we have created, and I'm not sure whether you can blame anyone. It's just, how the world developed in the last 50 years. We have basically created a lot of inequality, and it's absolutely not surprising to me that there's a large number of jobs where people are really unhappy with. And I would not hope that this is true for the academics. Actually, I don't think so. It does not, at least not reflect my experience with all the people who have studied and have an academic job, even if they are only part-time employed. I actually think that they are that they're more or less happy. Of course, you always have something to complain with, but I think the real reason why we have so many, unhappy people is that we have so many people working in very problematic, under very problematic conditions, and there are more women than men, obviously.
Mm-hmm. So another part of, thank you, Petra, but another part of this number, and I want to direct the next question maybe to Maria. Another part of this number says that Germany is very good in, for example, healthcare, access to healthcare for male and females. But the two areas that we are suffering are knowledge, which is totally imbalanced, especially like looking at the number of girls that go to arts and humanitarian sciences and those kind of things are a lot more than girls that go to engineering school. So why, I mean, have you seen this around you, or is it just a number that somebody calculated and maybe they are wrong? Or are we seeing the same thing around us as mothers, as scientists, that there is such a big knowledge gap between male and female?
Yeah, thank you, Nargis, for the question. I talk, I guess, more as a physicist. I'm trained in Barcelona, but I was also one of the only 4 girls in my class. I was one of the only 2 PhD students in my theoretical physics lab. So I kind of went through similar experiences. I see it very clearly, and I think Germany, it's maybe stronger than other places where I've been to. Yeah, I mean, as a mother, you see it very clearly. I have a boy and a girl, and the boy gets the cars and the girl gets the dresses, and the boy gets the interesting toys, even if it's just toys, but toys that make you think, and the girl gets like a nice thing to put on the hair. Or you see it at kindergarten often with comments from the teachers. Like one time someone commented, my daughter has very big hands, could be a good secretary. I was like, oh my God, you cannot be possible that the teacher said that, she said that. And I guess I couldn't repress myself. And I said, or maybe a good programmer could, because I was like, oh my God. So I think it's very naive to say if we do not change society, we will not change anything. But I think that we also heard it, changing things at the level of university, I think it's too late, because people that made it there, they already know very well what the problems are, and they already have kind of thought about the solutions. There is a few people that have not thought about it, so it's good that we repeat it to them. But if we do not try to change earlier on, we will never get there. And I think changing earlier on is really, really presenting the role models much earlier on, and not seeing a working mother as a bad thing for a child, for example, or things like that. And this is not the case at the moment, at least not here in Germany. Mm-hmm. And this is tough.
May I comment to this, because I find it very interesting what you say, and I would like to share with you my experience as a mother of 3 daughters. And you can imagine that I would not buy my daughter any stuff to put on your hair. I bought all the toys that you can imagine for like Lego and building stuff and computers and robots and all the stuff that you could possibly dream of as a boy. And my girls decided to play with the things that they could put on their hair that they inherited from their cousins, right? That was just how it was. But, and now comes the interesting thing. In the same way as boys have problems developing language in the first, the girls are much faster in developing language. The interest in Lego and building blocks and computers and everything comes later for the girls. It's not that it's not there, it just comes later. My girls actually discovered their old toys and took them up and built with them when they were already older. So I think there is not a difference in the total, preference. It's kind of time shifted. Girls seem to me to be very much preferring the interactive plays when they're very young, because then they can talk and they're dressing up like something and they are playing. And it comes later that they're interested for devices and probably not a truck also. That truck never made it into our, the truck. There was a truck, but it was never touched.
Very, very good point.
But, all kinds of intelligent devices, they just had interest in that at a later stage. And probably we shouldn't just give up if we find that the girls don't touch it. Maybe they will touch it at some point.
Yeah, let me just very quickly say, I fully agree with you. What I've realized, though, is that, so I come from Barcelona, and the family members in my family, when they bring presents for my kids, they think about it. They think there is a girl and a boy, and they should not give the girl the girly things. And so you can feel that there is a kind of an effort there going on in the background, while I don't have that much of a feeling with my German part of the family that will really go into these gender stereotypes in a much more natural way. What I feel like it's maybe I come from Barcelona, which is a very, very, big metropolis and so on. Maybe that's the reason for it. But I have had this impression here stronger.
Mm-hmm. That's too correct. But Bavaria is also, I have heard, it's a little exception in Germany. So I'm going to take the questions to more a little bit higher, like for younger scientists direction. And Julia, I would appreciate if you could try to start the conversation here. So there are a lot of programs these days for supporting female scientists, for example, BMBF has this rule that if you have children, you get 2 additional years of support that can apply for different things. So all of them are very good, but sometimes we hear complaints from our male colleagues that giving this kind of opportunities to women is kind of tightening the space around improvement of male scientists' careers. What do you think about that? Do you think giving opportunities to women equal taking opportunities away from men?
I think it just should be done on an equitable basis. You mentioned right at the beginning Sweden as the example in Europe, which is doing better than Germany or the rest of Europe, in fact. And the 2 years I've been on the Swedish Research Council, panel, I've learned so much from them, how you should be doing that. First of all, you should, that all their committees were half female, half male, which was in Sweden not a problem because they have a lot of female faculty, but they had to bring me in from the UK and somebody else from Germany. But what they looked at in all their application was the career age of people. So, and it was expected that men take parental leave as much as women. They have to take parental leave, otherwise they lose the money, basically. So they have shared parental leave in Sweden for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years maybe now. And so all the CVs very meticulously for male and female candidates listed career breaks or their career age, basically time from PhD, excluding any career breaks they had to take. And I think that's what we have to do. I mean, the half of the parents are men, so that should be reflected in that. And that argument that some men feel that they are being infringed, I haven't heard that much, I must say. I'm not sure whether this is actually true, but it seems a little bit like this. I think somebody mentioned in the run-up to this event to me that it's a bit like Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter kind of argument. I think that's a bit silly to do that. I think we have to pull together in this and support this. So I think making amends, and the EU does that also. You have to, if you have children, I think once there's a basic grant, I had to upload my kids' birth certificates as a proof to get basically time deducted since PhD to be still eligible for a grant. I think that's just how we do it. We have to just treat it as the career age. I actually treat career breaks like this. If people take time out to raise children, men or women, it's actually something they should put on their CV. Also, men should do that because it's actually a life skill you learn, right? You learn organization, time management, still working with sleep deprivation and so on. But I mean, I think career breaks because of parenthood is just one of the many issues that women face. I think they face a lot of other things, and we're not really talking much about that here. We have a good body of female students and postdocs, but they don't become all, director of a Max Planck Institute or Helmholtz Institute or at the UK at an institute. So it's where do these people they are? We have a bit of a survivor bias here. You had some talks from people who made it despite against the odds almost. We need to hear from those who actually failed and understand why.
That's correct. And also this is a very good point, and we wish we could invite some additional speakers from different perspective of this. But here, because most of our audience here are younger scientists from Helmholtz and around the universities around Munich. So question that what's raising is that because you have gone up the ladder, as you mentioned yourself, and like you have seen behind the scene, right? So there are two perspectives that you can bring here is that whether what we see from our point of view as junior scientists is the same thing you see from your point of view from behind the scene. As you correctly mentioned, maybe some of these feelings we have are completely unfounded, like, for example, the competition between male and female scientists over getting a professorship, right? And the other one is that you have a lot of years of experience and you have gone through this path yourself. So this would enlighten people at least to know there is a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like, so if you work hard, maybe I will become Julia.
So it's very kind of you to say. I once had this moment. We had a female academic at King's who actually failed in her academic career. So she left and went to some smaller, less research demanding, more teaching oriented university. And I was head of department at the time and told her how sorry I am to see her go. I just, there's nothing we can do. And she said, well, actually, I've been a role model to her. And I said, I'm not a role model. I was just there. She said, just the fact that you're there, right? You are a role model, whether you want it or not. You can just choose to be a good or bad role model, I suppose. But the fact that some women make it and make themselves visible actually is already doing more than I actually thought it would help, right? It is. We've got this pyramid effect, right? We even though, I said in the beginning as well, nursery already tries to put kids in different buckets already, but you can do things from the top down. That's what I meant. Like the Swedish Research Council, they're doing things from the other one. And Sarah mentioned before, all the activities in the UK where you say you have to have meetings between 10 to 4 to allow for childcare runs and all these things. It's called Athena Swan. I was involved that in Oxford as well. These things help, and they help not only women, they also help men. So what I did there in Oxford to make this happen is I brought in young fathers who actually had the same struggles as young mothers. They just don't talk about it. And that's what I don't.
Yes, that's exactly
that's I think that has to be changed. I think people have to be upfront about that.
Exactly.
You know, as I said, half of the parents are men. And
that's
that
exactly
already
where
will
my
help.
next question is going. And I thought maybe it's appropriate to target it to Karsten, that we today and always we hear about discrimination and the lack of diversity toward female part of the society or scientists. So let's ask you as a father and as a male scientist, what kind of, Karsten, discriminations or lack of diversity you noticed around male scientists, like things that you don't talk about it. For example, I can give you an example to just make it easier to come up with other examples, is that my husband took parental leave and he did not like it because he was not accepted in the society of the daycares and the schools as their parent who would take care of the children, right? So this kind of like, that was one aspect of discrimination. What do you think is the other aspects of discrimination for men?
Thanks for the question, Agus. I don't recall any of those. I enjoyed it most of the time.
Life is lovely as a man.
Yeah, I mean, scientifically, they are for well, I never had the experience that a woman was chosen instead of me, which probably happens the other way around much more often, right? So I really have no instances to offer here, Nargis.
Okay, so let's ask our other. Ask Misha. Misha, you want to add something here?
Oof, that's a hard one. You can only lose with that one. No, I mean, I want to first emphasize that our lab is really embracing equality. And that goes way beyond gender balance. I mean, in my lab, we have actually 50% balance between female and male students and postdocs. But it goes
perspective of your male students and postdocs on the diversity? Are they? I
think they enjoy it, and I think we embrace it because we go for scientific excellence when we hire. So we don't see that as a guy, that is a lady. We just go for scientific excellence in the hiring process in our lab. But I mean, I experienced not on first hand, but I saw, for example, job advertisements which were specifically claiming you can only apply as a female scientist for senior lecture positions where I was looking at. And that was a shock to me at first. And I wrote them an email, just like I said, a mistake, or is it like, is it a tiebreaker for if you have equally good candidates? And they specifically said, no, we want a female scientist for that. And that was where I was the first time shocked. But then I had a chat with them and actually realized they didn't have enough balance in their faculty. And they really needed to break open this rigid structure. And sometimes you need these measurements. I think we are actually here in a very inclusive environment in ICB or in Helmholtz Computational Health, which I really endorse, so that we never had to have this, really very strong measurements in place here, because it naturally happened. So I was fortunate to work mostly in such environments, but I have seen also in other areas that sometimes there's a scale was tipping. And when I thought like, that didn't feel fair, but then talking to them and realizing, look, they didn't have actually any faculty balance, and you can understand their reasoning behind it. It was not in Germany, because in Germany that discrimination. Yes, that was in Australia, actually. My wife is from Australia, so I was also looking there for jobs. So it was actually funny because I wanted to move because of her there and our 4-year-old daughter. But then it was twisted like, I'm a man, I can't apply.
Difficult to say no to Australia. It's a beautiful country. I see Karsten wants to add some comment here. Karsten?
Yeah, great. If you establish a biased lab, right? I just wanted to mention we all try to go for scientific excellence, I guess. When we hire, something we should, of course, be aware of is that we have these unconscious biases, right, which we talked about quite a bit. So making ourselves aware of that during the hiring process is for sure something we can, or we have to do, right, all of the time. I mean, even if whenever we do that, right, we should be aware that there are these biases and we have to work against them, right?
Mm-hmm. So, and but as Petra mentioned, there is always the person who takes care, right, is going to have shorter CV. So, and then when it comes to the competition, sometimes the shorter CVs are given like higher priority. That was the point we were trying to make. Let me ask, now that Carsten, you were unmuted, let's start this last round of questions about career building and what could be the good feature traits or characteristics that female scientists can adapt, that because we don't have too many role models or a long history of looking at our great grandmother to see how she did it, and so we learn from it, right? So we're asking here from the experts, what would be the good characteristic as a female scientist and leader we should pick up that makes us independent and seen equal?
Are you asking me that, or?
Oh, Petra, you already mentioned that you answered that question, that you actually started by behaving like
yes, because I have to say that this really helps. I mean, any kind of insecurity is just bad for you, right? This is just how it is. So you should learn very early on in life that if you are insecure, you should not show it. I mean, you can say this is, in a way cowardice, and this is bad if you don't show insecurity. But it's not so hard to just be relatively self-confident, or at least appear self-confident. I mean, it's something yet that you can learn. It's not so complicated. It's like learning to eat with knife and fork. Right? It's not that it's completely impossible for women to just be a bit less easily intimidated, or taking yourself back and say, well, I don't really know, but this could be the answer. You should just not do that. It's just a mistake. Okay. And I think we should tell this to people. It doesn't mean that you should. It doesn't mean that you should not question yourself. You should completely always question yourself. And I would say it's a big mistake that men sometimes make, or some of, probably not only men, but some of the, the way the people who speak up, sometimes they don't question themselves, often enough.
Do you feel that men somehow during their life experiences learn to be confident?
I think it's a peer pressure. I mean, they have to survive in their bodies, in the football club. Also, you will be beaten up if you don't do it, right? So I think it's almost like a natural selection. And the girls usually don't do that. I mean, they have their own ways of shaming others and dissing others. But I would say that there are certain ways of interacting that it's not, you don't have to completely, act wrong. Also, you just have to. It's a certain etiquette that you have to accept.
The confidence is the key. Let's see what Maria wants to add to this conversation.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that, I mean, I partially agree with you, Petra. I think that especially like we heard 3 great talks today, and I think that, to become a leader in any field or in any company or in any country, you can have very little amount of self-doubt, isn't it? So I think that this is something that is probably a trait of many leaders. But I think that there is a lot of emphasis on let's make women successful by making them be men. And I think that I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that we should also try to teach males to behave a little bit more female, which I think it's happening slowly, to do not put all the burden on us. This would be my opinion, that all
and them.
Leadership for women, how to be in a meeting only for women. What about males? Can we also explain to them all these unconscious biases that they have to start looking at us a little bit different?
Very good point. Let me direct this question, Maria, to one of our male speakers here, Carsten or Misha. Please join in answering. When you behave caring, like the way that is kind of expect, like women are tagged with caring, like, are you, do you feel discomfort, or are you finding it difficult to behave that way, or the group expects from you to always be the tough boss? Misha.
Absolutely not. I mean, I'm working from home because my daughter is sick, and I negotiated with my wife that I can come here today, and I have to take over later because she has another meeting. So it's about sharing the load. And my wife also wants to have her own career. We both did PhDs in Cambridge, that's where we met. And we tried both to find a balance in between. And it's not like a burden, it's fun. It's like I tell my lab, look, sorry, after 4 p.m. I can't talk to you. I want to go with my daughter to the playground. And after I put her to bed at 8:30 p.m., I start working again. So that is often how you have also, I mean, this pandemic was not only bad, it also had some good things also for family life. And you could spend a lot of time with them. And so it's nice also. It's you know, you want to be not just a, you know, father is never being there. It has its pro and cons. Yeah.
Let's see what Carsten has to add. Thank you, Misha. Very modern man, modern days. Good to see.
Just maybe one comment to a discussion about showing confidence or self-confidence between Petra and some people in the chat also. I guess it is something, there are different aspects to it, right? If you want to get a grant, you should be self-confident, right? To the maximum level. That's what I learned when applying for the ESC, right? You are there, you want to get 2 million, you have to show them that you know what to do with it, right? That's the same for male and female, right? If you don't go for a grant application, of course, you can show insecurities, right? Within your lab, you should discuss things that are not clear, right? And then obvious questions. And so I guess it's a bit about where to show that, right? And where to show off. And of course, we should learn that, I guess, if we want to get that, right? The other thing about caring, I consider myself as more on the caring side, I guess. And of course, if we discuss male and women, it's always a large distribution, right? With a lot of overlap. And I guess the solution to that is a societal one, right? We have to provide daycare for kids and elderly, right? So that people can do the job they want to do if they want to, right?
Yes, Carsten, let me ask another question, because you are the caring one, right? Everybody knows that you are the one who cares really deeply about every person works for you. But do you think that you are taken as serious as other male colleagues of you who are not caring? Between the male colleagues, right? Like you go to a man meeting with other people. Do they take you as serious because you're caring, or they take you less serious?
Yeah, you might be right. Maybe not always, but then I don't care.
Awesome. That's the answer we want to hear.
Really?
And I forgot here. Sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
No, I can't believe that anybody would ever say anything. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
That's correct. Like, we wanted to hear some gossip from behind the walls of men's life. But last question, I keep it for now. Nakai here, sorry, you were outside my screen and kind of like fell out of my radar. So you have just recently passed through all of these hurdles of hoops and jumps through the loops to get to a great position that you have. If you look back at like a few years ago when you just started, like you graduated from your PhD and you wanted to start this, what advice now you give yourself from like 3-4 years ago to be careful, or to think like this, or don't think like that, to make your life easier? So this is a question for our younger audience here.
Thanks for the question. I think a lot of it has been mentioned by various panelists in their previous answers. I think in general, for any gender that one might identify with, you know, when you've passed, for example, after you've graduated your PhD, you've decided to for example, come on an academic career, you know what you want to do. You can be a bit more sure of yourself, you know, like I would, for example, tell myself to be a bit more sure of myself. I would be a bit more confident. I would speak up more in meetings, whether it be with my own group members, with my collaborators. I would ask more questions. I would generally be more present. I would not, for example, sit back and if let's say the meeting has ended and I haven't said anything, then I would just, okay, well, maybe I would not say anything. Then I would do less of that. I would, if I have an opinion, I would talk about it, because more often than not, what I realized is that when I didn't say what I wanted to say because I was having a doubt on whether that's a useful thing to say or not, somebody else would say it in a less good way, like, 2 minutes later. And then I'll be like, no, wait a second, no, actually, but then I can't say it then because then it sounds like an afterthought. I was like, so that actually doesn't work. So if you have a good thought, even if you are not 100% sure that it is something, maybe you could tell people what your sort of half-formed idea is, so that maybe people can even work with you to flesh it out completely. That's still a very useful thing to be bringing up. I would definitely do that a lot more, because it demonstrates that you're with the discussion, you're thinking, and you are really keen to participate. And that's what a lot of our male colleagues do very well, I feel, especially at conferences. When you go to conference talks, all of the questions from audience are usually from males. And sometimes those questions are not very well formed. And the speaker has to go and, oh, I think you might be asking about this. And then they answer the question. So then, then why are the, for example, younger scientists or female scientists withholding their questions or their comments because it's not very well thought out? Like, people will help you think about it if you brought them up. So that's the number one thing I think I would change. I'm naturally quite a shy person. I don't, it's really against my natural tendencies to do this. I was very silent in my beginning years as a PhD student, and this is still something I'm trying to overcome. So this is really the primary thing that I would say to every young scientist.
Awesome. I think that strikes a chord with everybody here, and thank you for sharing that. Petra, I see your hand raised, but if you please make it quick because we are closing the session.
Yeah, I know I'm not a very quick one, so I just want to come into the comments that were in the chat. I mean, I would not say that I want people to pretend that they are self-confident if they are not, but really, I mean, you cannot wait for the world to pick up the quiet one in the background. It will not work. I mean, as a PI, of course, you can, if you know that, and that's what I'm doing, you can pull the quiet one to the front and say, well, probably you have something to say. But if you're in the situation of the dependent, of the quiet people, I think really you have to learn how to speak up. And I mean, we just heard it is possible. It's not easy, and some people have to work for a longer time to get there, but I think it's worth doing it.
It's good to hear all the opinions. I don't think any opinion is wrong. It's just a life path that we take. So thank you very much, everybody. Again, really, we wish that we could continue this conversation longer. Maybe we can do it later. But now I'm going to close the panel discussions and pass on the microphone to the commander of our ship, Professor Dr. Thijs, who is going to tell us just a few sentences about the whole institute and also the people who helped in the vaccine. Bye-bye. Fabian?
Thanks, Nargis. Thanks, everyone, for this fantastic discussion, but in particular also the talks, Petra, Sarah, Julia. This was super I think important and exciting to do, and thanks to the people organizing this in-house here. I think Hannah will be coming up to this. I've been speaking essentially for 3 minutes, so I try to be super short about things because I know I realize we're already over time. Today's International Women's Day, or Women in STEM and so on, for us, it's about diversity on gender and many other levels. We're doing a very good job, I would say, at least in comparison to maybe more natural sciences, on the general diversity side. I think we can be getting better and more of these. I'm trying to share my slides. I hope you can see my slides now. You see yes. You see it maximized now as well? Cool.
It is maximized, yes.
So I put EDI, and because we are computational people, so I tried to get some stats kindly compiled from Anna just to see how we're currently doing. So this is completely just the view now of our Helmholtz Computational Health Center that I direct and co-lead together with Igor Zigin. So we are already nicely diverse, nearly half with respect to gender, and maybe sort of 45% or so with respect to internationality as two of those simpler measures that we're doing. Of course, diversity is more. You heard this from Sarah also with respect to research areas. Interestingly, she put that forward, but also with respect to religion, sexual orientation, and so on, which is not some stats that we currently have. Interestingly, the percentages of sort of if we take this previous stat here and just split it up by sort of scientific age on PI, PhD, and postdoc level, sort of quite equal. And I think this type of stat, that's actually really good. I hope you can see my mouse. So that we're not dropping with respect to, for example, the male-female ratio on the PI level. I think it's an effort that we've been really very consciously, very much putting a lot of effort in terms of hiring and so on, because we've all heard about this pyramid, and you heard this discussion before. And actually, before I now say something about the measures towards that, let me make this one key point here. I'm talking about people stats because I think in the end, for every leader of a PhD team, of a PI, of a professor, of an institute director, whatever, our key need is that we want to have the best people to work with. I think it's all about heads. This is like the most important thing. The money, the research, the successes, all of that follow if you work with the best people. And of course, the best people nowadays, we know, and I think nowadays also most of us are convinced of, are of course people from all kinds of backgrounds, from all kinds of genders and so on. So we do realize that in order to get the best people, we need to make sure we have an environment that allows that. There were a whole bunch of really great suggestions said before, and I think we have to really make sure to maybe not think only about these topics on International Women's Day or maybe whenever some grant reviews coming up, but to do this a bit more systematically. Our center has been putting some effort into that. There's a whole bunch of effort. There's even some standards that they got some certification of. And here's a slide I got courtesy from our Equal Opportunity Officer, Gülzin, who has been kindly sharing this. You can see it's not super up to date with some of these dates there, but I think there's some interesting points in there. For example, there's even this total equality. This is some type of award that really measures equal opportunities, but also family-friendly measures. Interestingly, in German, equal opportunity always means female and male, so it means just gender diversity. And I think this is something that, particularly at our center, what we need to be getting better is at international diversity, also with respect to openness and so on. So many discussions that I have with PIs, postdocs, and PhDs is in part about sort of feeling maybe unfairly treated because of sex, but mostly because of language. I mean, we know we Germans like these forms and so on, and typically those are in German and are complicated, and then maybe you have them. So being open for international researchers and really making this an international place, a true international one, I think is something we also need to invest much in. But of course, also same for parents and so on. You like Sarah said, we should make it standard that whenever you're on a tenure track position, also PhD postdoc position, and you're on parent leave, of course this needs to be added to your whatever time and so on happens. Doesn't always cope so nicely with the Wissenschaftszeitgesetz, but some of these things just need to be implemented. In any case, I don't go through each of these points. What I really so far is learning that that there is a big awareness. This whole event has been organized by PhDs and postdocs from the center, and thank you for all the PIs also contributing to that. So this awareness, I think, is something we start having more and more. I want this to be an agenda point, not only like once a year or something like that, but to be systematic about this. And I think Laura has some interesting suggestions to come into this discussion. So thank you again for this nice discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Fabian. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. So yeah, thanks, Fabian, for your introduction. So basically just one last thing before we close. So there's this thing that I, like others and I, have thought a couple of months about already, which is organizing at the Helmholtz or the Computational Health Institute a more regular meeting, such as the one today. And we introduce it at the moment as the Stammtisch, which comes from the German word Stammtisch. I just put the Wikipedia definition here. So it's an informal group meeting held on a regular basis. And a Stammtisch is not a structured meeting, but rather a friendly get-together. So the idea is that we kind of have a bi-monthly meetup of a mixture of informal gatherings, networking events, invited talks, and workshops. Similar to also what other institutes have, so it's kind of missing at the moment. And the mission of this should really be that we promote women and also gender minorities in our field, which is the STEM field, and just because some people actually didn't know what I meant by this, so it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And as today, like, we really want that everyone who's interested should participate, so it should be really inclusive to anyone. Which brings me to the last point. So at the moment, it's an idea that we had for a while, but now we really want to put it into action. And Sarah basically showed us that, because she came up 3 weeks ago with this idea that we should plan this event today, and we got so much done in 3 weeks. And really this pushed me to, we can probably also push this now. So if you are interested in being part of the organizing team and bringing in your own ideas and have interesting contributions, then please get in touch with me. And I also created a MetaMost channel, which is called Stammtisch Planning. So just join this and then we will discuss it further. And with this, I hand over to Zora for the really final remarks, and then we close it for today.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. I think we are almost about to wrap up. We had very interesting lines of speakers. So we saw how, from Julia's talk, we saw how much sacrifice a female scientist may need to actually put in effect to be both a successful researcher as well as someone that's successful with her family as well. From Sarah, I think her resolution for all the changes that she was proposing is really inspiring for me. I look forward.
On the full screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to move the full screen. Probably I need to, rearrange, just remove this bar. And from Petra, we learned that, she was, I think, was really inspired by your passion, Petra, if you're still on the line, for the science that you are doing, but at the same time, your quick tips for us as juniors was really interesting. And with the panels, everything that was brought up in terms of managing life and at the same time being a successful female in science, that was really inspiring. So once again, I would like to thank everyone who has stayed with us until the end of the program, all the invited speakers and panelists. Particularly, I think now that we are closing the event, we should pay the proper acknowledgement to everyone who worked really hard during past 3 weeks, after hours, during the school holidays, over the weekends. You're all amazing and inspiring for us as more juniors, but also I think we all learn from each other, and every woman is just inspiring and a role model for all other women. And just want to say thank you so much for your commitment and your contribution. This event wouldn't be possible again, given such a short time frame that we had. Thank you all for your support. With that, just kindly remind you that there will be a networking session for those of us who are on site. And this year's theme for Women's Day is Break the Bias. And this is the pose that you need to take. And I think I stop my screen and ask Bonnie to, take over. So I think we are getting ready to for the photo shoot.
I'm not sure if you can see it now.
No. I mean, it's a white screen, but if
yes,
anyone who is willing to, cool.
For those who are not aware, this year's International Women's Day does have a theme. It's Break the Bias, and the position is like this. So if you are interested, please do turn on your cameras, and I will be taking a screenshot. If you're not interested, then you can leave your cameras off. And so just to show that again to you, I think I have to stop sharing my screen so that I can take a screenshot. One moment. Okay, so just to reiterate, this is the position that we all want to be for those of you who are interested, and then I'll be making a social media post. So unfortunately, I'm going to take off perhaps my video because I can't do two things at the same time. Okay, so once everybody is ready, this is the position. Okay, one screenshot, 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more just in case. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye. Don't forget the networking. See you. Bye.
Thanks a lot.